we're very pleased to have this seminar titled Rewilding Therapy, Ecotherapy and Social Change with Chiara, Fortina, Santin. So Chiara, a warm welcome to the TAS seminar series. And I'm just going to take a moment with your bio, and then over to you to get started, if that's all right. So in your bio, you write, I'm a nature lover, a white woman in my 50s, heterosexual, Italian. I'm a systemic family psychotherapist, supervisor and trainer, director of family therapy services and rainbow community projects. I'm passionate about social justice, ethical practice, creativity, and self-reflexivity. I've been working with children and families for more than 30 years. In the UK, worked in a statutory agency for 10 years, and I've been providing post-adoption therapeutic support to children and their families in the Southeast since 2012 as an independent therapist. I have considerable experience in supervising and have been teaching on systemic courses for 12 years. In the past 3 years, I've been developing community projects and ecosystemic nature-based therapy. I've written a few articles and I've presented at several national European conferences. A book on rewilding therapy will be published in May 2024. So I guess that is maybe, oh, there it
That's
is. Great. And we'll get the link for the chat for that, Chiara. So everybody, we can kind of have a look at that. Chiara, warm welcome and over to you for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I want to say special thank you to Mick, who, believe it or not, was my lecturer at university. And we were talking about when was that? So it was between 99 and 2002, so a long time ago. So lots of things have happened in between. So what I'm gonna present. So I'm very grateful to be here and to be given the opportunity to share my work and some ideas that obviously are being expanded in the book. But it's mainly to connect also with colleagues who are passionate about two things, maybe nature and social change, social justice. So I believe possibly some of you are here for that reason. Whatever the reason, you're welcome. And I'm gonna start sharing my slides. I've got lots of slides. I always prepare. So, and my style is very much interactive, but obviously given the time, maybe what we'll do, I will welcome ongoing comments in the chat if anything connects with you. I would love that so that I have a bit of a feedback. As you know, if you present online or you have tried, it's very hard to follow the chat and focus on the slides. So just keep maybe sharing what your thoughts are, and then I will be able maybe to catch up at some point. So the tech works. So Rewilding Therapy is also the title of my book that has just been published this year. And there was a previous article where for the first time I was writing about my ecotherapy sessions. So my process has been very much about I'm gonna go out and do it. I didn't know what I was doing to start with, and then I started writing process notes and supervision, and that's how I learned to link theory to practice, and then again in a circular way, trying to reflect and learn, and how some of the things that I was doing in nature with different clients may relate to different theories. And I would say that my core training is systemic. So family therapy is say the practical application of systemic thinking. And I've been working with families for a long time, but I qualified in 2008 as a family therapist. and I worked in social care, as John mentioned. And then at the moment, I've been working as an independent therapist with adoptive families mainly for 12 years. So that's where the practice examples are coming from. So one of the things that as systemic thinkers and practitioner we do is to think about context, because context gives meaning. Context is around individuals and families, and there are different layers of context. And at the moment, obviously, we are living through empathamorphic crisis. I'm not sure about that word. It's familiar to you, maybe other people. Across modalities, of course, there are different words, but there is a lot of shared ground. Maybe poly crisis, meta crisis, all of the same. So a crisis at all levels: socio-political, economic, environmental, and also social inequalities, and a sense of despair and overwhelm, I would say, about the climate change that has become a climate emergency, as we have even experienced in the last few days. Here we go. You might recognize this terrifying image. So this is Hurricane Milton. So staying in the USA, there is this lovely book. If you haven't come across it, Richard Louv has done so much to advocate for children and families to spend more time in nature, and has even suggested this nature deficit disorder, just to convey the lack of just the disconnection with nature, and the fact that children spend less time in nature than ever before, and more on screens. And time in nature is not leisure time, is an essential investment in our children's health and in our own, of course. So as you can see, nature deficit disorder is for me, is a pathologizing language that I don't particularly like, and yet it fits, or it connects with maybe the importance of this, and how we lack certainly the time in nature, that and the relationship with nature that possibly, as I was growing up, I was lucky to have nature on my doorstep, and a lot of summer camps. And I'm coming from the Alps, the Italian Alps, and the mountains are my, I would say, favorite landscape that have really shaped me and my upbringing, as well as my grandmother, who used to grow vegetables in the garden and had some animals. And I'm realizing possibly as I was writing my book, particularly how important these experiences have been, that obviously as you are living through those experiences, you don't realize the value of it. But I consider that is a privilege that I have had in my childhood. So there are key people that I'm mentioning here, just to point to some maybe texts that are maybe you might be already familiar with. Joanna Macy and certainly has done so much work for decades about the environment. She's a Buddhist scholar, bringing spirituality, environment, social justice together. And she's leading a big movement called the Great Work That Reconnects. So if you're not, or if you are interested, if you're not familiar with it, I would encourage you to explore this. And you also may be familiar with Bendel and his idea of deep adaptation. And in 2018, he wrote a groundbreaking paper that, interestingly, the paper wasn't accepted in academia, and was seen as very controversial, because he was using for the first time a very crude, I would say, and honest language in really describing the extent of the climate crisis and the denial that we may fall into, and the anticipation of social collapse. So again, if you haven't read that paper, or maybe there is now a movement called deep adaptation that you might want to explore as well. And you will be familiar with this public voice as well from the younger generation speaking out. And that was 2018. And she started the school strikes, and you might remember that that was also happening, certainly in Brighton and somehow in the UK. This is a picture I've taken in a beautiful woodland, not far from Brighton, and you know, when something really connects with you, and it was about what we are doing to nature, and I was thinking about why somebody has felt the need to really write on this tree so deep and cut it through. And for me, I felt like angry at those people, and then I now use it as a way to say we are all doing damage to the environment and to the planet in so many ways, and we are part of the disconnection that has happened over time between human nature and the environment. So this is what we are doing. And on the left is the pristine, maybe environment of the Alps, where I go every year to recharge, and unfortunately noticing the climate change and the glaciers disappearing. And then the other two pictures, one is of the Sussex coast and the amount of rubbish that the sea brings sometimes to shore. And the right picture is in London, a canal in London. I don't remember exactly where it was, but I was really shocked to see that the water wasn't even filtering through. So I like you to just read this quote that described really how everything, even, you know, the soil and the earth and the water is contaminated by pollution and plastic everywhere, and what do we feel? How do we feel when this kind of scenes or pictures are presented to us? We might be shocked, we might be angry, we might complain about this, we might be in denial. But in terms of how this seminar and working in nature connects to social change, for me is about, so what you're going to do about it? Because otherwise we become compliant. So as you well know, ecopsychology has been a fast developing field from Rozak, who seems to be the name associated with ecopsychology, so the merging of ecology and psychology, and the idea of ecological ego, which is very interesting. So this picture, I think, speaks for itself. So this is very much on the left, you know, anthropocentrism and the way we put ourselves and human race on top of everything and exploiting the planet for our benefits, and capitalism and all of those things. So this is very much how we have developed also culture and a lifestyle, particularly in Western cultures, a way of relating to nature as a commodity, as a resource, as a thing. So on the right, obviously, you have a completely change of view. So humans are seen as part of the ecology, and this really is a mind-blowing, I suppose, change of ways of seeing the world. which we can understand maybe intellectually, but actually in practice can be very challenging. So what does it mean that we are nature and nature is us? So some key theories I want to run through, but again, I don't have time to expand, but just as pointers. So there is the biophilia hypothesis, which is simply saying we are biological being and we have this innate need and attraction to nature. But of course, because of the because we have put ourselves in a position of dominance over nature, we have created a disconnection as well, an emotional disconnection. But we are nature, and we are biologically prone to seek that connection with nature because we are nature. And we all know, I think, there is a lot of literature of the benefits of being in nature, spending time in nature. But this particular research is obviously back in '84, so quite a long time ago. I think is mind-blowing. What I found is that even just patients who were in hospital and looking out, having views of nature, recovered better and quicker than a control group. I mean, this is mind-blowing. Just even looking at pictures of nature or looking at views of nature might really help. And stress reduction theory, we know that being in nature, and you will have experienced this, really de-stress our nervous system, and also helps us to keep our focus or to clear our mind. So attention restoration theory. So as you can see, it's quite old theories and they are still relevant, but more and more research evidence is emerging to support this. But alongside this, of course, there is the issue of is everybody able to access these benefits? And that's why this particular talk is about highlighting how access to nature should be an issue of social justice, because everybody should have access and get the benefits. But we know that this depends on the geography where you live, your wealth, your race, your gender. All of those things play a part in how people are able to access the benefits of nature. So reconnecting with nature is our job, because obviously the lifestyle we live is leading to our default position is to feel disconnected from nature. And we don't use enough our senses because our lives are very much based on our heads. So if you haven't visited this place, Knepp Castle Estate in West Sussex, and they have been rewilding the land, and they've been showing some amazing results of animals returning for the first time to nest there, or just how they are managing the land in a very different way. And I like these quotes because it leads to say, is also teaching us something about ourselves and the hubris that has led us to our current predicament. So if we connect with nature, nature becomes our mirror and we can see ourselves in nature's. So that's something that obviously Nick Tocton and Bill Plotkin have written about quite even, earlier on. And Nick Tocton was the first to introduce the idea of wild therapy. So thinking now about the context of therapy and how this wider context might influence what we do and how we are as therapists in nature, is about challenging the traditional view of therapy as, just a private affair, and considering the domestication of our lives and also how we need to connect with our wild mind and rewild our inner and outer worlds. And Bill Plotkin as well is definitely talking about rewilding psychology and see ourselves in a more holistic way, so that our human psyche reflects the ecology that we obviously see and experience when we are in nature and as part of nature. And for me, I would say this is a little bit of a summary of my own experience, my own journey of rewilding myself and my way of connecting with nature. So having obviously come from the Alps and very different landscape, it's been for me a real journey, you know, reconnecting with nature in a different landscape in the UK, the different smells and the damp and the rainy weather, which I don't particularly like. My body doesn't like it. So it's been a real journey for me to almost re-experience that bond with nature, but in a different landscape. And this is also about obviously recognizing that biological imprint, that the biophile hypothesis, that we have this innate desire and need to be in nature because we are nature. So it's been also about reclaiming my relationship with nature and recognizing that this is fundamental to our physical, emotional, and mental well-being. And also experiencing and really have that belief that nature has this healing power for ourselves, but also for our clients. And rediscovering that reciprocity with the natural world that we are obviously not familiar with, or most of us are not familiar with. And also recognize our responsibility to look after the planet. So I've described this kind of reciprocity as dual hospitality because when I'm in nature, I want to see myself as a guest. And if I am a guest in nature, means that I recognize nature as a host. So this is a real upside down of that ego versus eco approach to life. So when we experience that, then we become explorers of ourselves and our inner landscapes. But also rewilding then might mean that we are also exploring the wild edges of ourselves as therapists. And we become co-explorers because we don't exactly know. We have skills, we have some ideas behind us, but when we are in nature, we are really considering nature as a co-therapist, and that can change completely the therapeutic process. Obviously, I can't go into any details, but it's just an important point as therapists. And this is because we are embedded and embodied in nature. And for me, working in nature has been a real gift in terms of feeling also more connected to, grounded and connected to the landscape here. And the idea that, yeah, where is the external context and our identity or selves begin? And so we are not only embodied and embedded when we work in nature or just by nature, but we are also entangled with matter, with our lives. And so I like this quote that shows really the need to think of ourselves as interacting and interacting in this context. So we are not cohabiting as we are alongside each other. We really have that interconnectedness between us and nature, and we are inhabiting the planet and nature itself. So I invite you now maybe to have a mindful moment. to think about ourselves and our bodies as nature. Invite you to connect to your body now as water, maybe connecting to your breathing or your air. We grow, we bloom, we seed, we wilt, we die. There is a full separation between humanity and nature. So when I work in nature, and there is a moment of connection that I feel we need to savor, or maybe at the end of an ecotherapy session. So I call this savoring, because our senses are not almost practicing enough how we feel, how we experience the world through our senses. So I invite my co-explorers to savor, to connect with their bodies and to savor that experience of connection. So I invite you to do the same if there was a moment of connection. Otherwise, just hold on to the idea of how would you do savoring in your exploration when you are in nature, or if you're with your clients. How do you capture those moments, those therapeutic moments of connection between selves, others, and nature? Since the idea of ecological self that invites to think about multiplicity and context. It's just not just how we often think about ourselves as contained individuals, but the self as a relational process, folding and unfolding in spatial temporal locations, which are both interior and exterior. Why I like this quote, which is Martin Jordan is one of the pioneers in ecotherapy. He was a lecturer at the University of Brighton, and I like it because it really shows how a sense of self is also coming from the place. And you might think of the places maybe in your own childhood or even in adulthood that have shaped or are shaping who you are and your sense of self and well-being. Maybe it's the sea, maybe it's the woodland, maybe it's a particular spot. So definitions of ecological self. So maybe Roszak, Macy and Brown, you know, as ecologists and ecopsychologists, suggested just to extend individual sense of self to include nature, but this is not enough. So I like the Bragg's quote about a wide, expansive or field-like sense of self, which ultimately includes all life forms, ecosystems, and the earth itself. You can see the difference. But I would say that is not enough, because we also need to think about our relationship with nature as responsibility to look after Earth itself. And this is leading back to obviously a lot of indigenous cultures who have lived by the land and developing a way of living that was very much in harmony with nature. And I like this quote. So this is a beautiful book. If you haven't come across it, really nice to read. The land knows you even when you're lost. And yet, as you can see, it reflects that complete upside down view of human nature as part of of nature itself, or the environment. So we are not at the top of the pile, but we are part of it, and we might even see ourselves as the bottom of it, and that the land knows us. And I like this quote as well, that really shows how indigenous populations have always had that ecological wisdom that now feels so new to us. As humans, we are profoundly interrelated in kinship networks with the entire fabric of life, from rocks to redwoods, butterflies to bears, clouds to corn. So there is no distinction or division. You can see the language as well, how in tune with nature that language is. And that leads to living and recognize all life as important, and how to be in the world with humility and generosity, because we are learning from nature. So in terms of systemic maybe ideas that relate to my practice in ecotherapy, the systemic roots are linked to Bateson, who was an anthropologist, who did a lot of observations of nature. And some of his key principles and ideas were: the map is not the territory. What does it mean? That if we have a map, it doesn't mean that we know what it's gonna be like to walk on that land, on that terrain, because we are going to find out as we walk along. And that is very much what ecotherapy is about for me. Is about becoming co-explorers with your clients, and also consider that everything is connected. So you are looking for patterns that connect with people's lives, with our lives, and using that. And I like this quote too, because he was also very aware of how the world was going, and the major problems in the world, he says, are the results of the difference between how nature works and the way people think. So it follows that we need to really think like nature. And that seems to be quite an easy thing to understand, but very hard to put into practice. So what's ecotherapy? So it might include, is like an umbrella term to include different kind of therapeutic activities like horticultural therapy, gardening, green care, conservation work, forest bathing, forest school, animal assisted therapy, wilderness therapy. Different, for example, in USA, they might use more wilderness therapy, nature-based therapy. They might have slightly different language. But what I've learned, in meandering, exploring and attending very many events in nature, and finding out what people were doing to learn from them, I came to a distinction between therapy and what is therapeutic. So any activity in nature, of course, is therapeutic because of what we have just said, the biophil hypothesis, because people have skills that can help people connect with nature in a meaningful way. But therapy, I mean, I'm assuming that we probably all know what therapy is, or we are therapists, and we definitely have those skills, and so I think it's important to make that distinction, and I like this kind of representation. You might have your own way of maybe describing this, but from Bragg and Leck in 2018, they highlighted how nature is helpful for anyone, and so it's about promoting access to nature and spending time in nature for health and well-being. And then you have maybe some other interventions that are nature-based. It's not maybe as formalized as therapy, but it might involve a lot of activities that happen in nature. But I think what they call green care, we might call it differently, is the idea of therapy that is conducted in nature. So as a psychological treatment. I think it's important for the public to understand this distinction so that they know what kind of qualifications people have, particularly for people who have received severe mental health difficulties, and so they can get the right support. So for me, my own definition is that therapy conducted in nature is by trained professionals who offer to work outdoors, and they themselves recognize the healing power of nature. And they are committed to provide a safe space and work through a range of difficulties and mental health issues to promote therapeutic change. So for me personally, I would say it's not something that I do, it's something that I try to live by. So it's a way of being in the world, has become very much like a way of being, a way of living, to reflect that humanity is interconnected to everything around us, whether it's visible, invisible, and a way of practicing within an ecology of cells as embodied, embedded, and entangled and linked to a landscape. But also I see ecotherapy as a creative process where nature becomes the green canvas where we can activate different ways of expressing, for example, using metaphors. And we experience our sense of belonging to the earth and each other, and a way of being a quiet activist in a world of chaos. So the first seeds of my ecotherapy practice are back to 2015. I was working in the adoption field, and I made a proposal to work in nature with multiple families and offer online parenting support. And it was really turned down or not taken up. And so I also did some pilots, taking some families in nature. So in 2018, 2019. And this is very much based on my experience of working with adoptive families and hearing from them about how their children are different in nature and how they feel also to have freedom and space. If they're having a meltdown, how to deal with it. So the sense of space and exploring and connecting and feeling more regulated. I will have to speed up a little bit. Just to show you what then happened, I set up a community interest company called Rainbow Community Projects. And since then, I've been, sorry, I need to skip this. So working with families, particularly during the lockdown, I developed ways of working, and as I say, reflecting back on what was happening in sessions, using metaphors. I will just whisk through this, using maybe creativity in this way for meaning making, particularly for children who are neurodiverse. It's important that they can focus on making something. Art making in nature become very meaningful, thinking about all the different relationships. It can be done individually, can be done obviously between a child and a parent, or inviting maybe family talks in nature, pairing people up. So nature and social change. Came across this definition of therapeutic activism, intentionally seeking to attend and disrupt oppressive socio-political contexts and processes. I don't know how you relate to this. Find your own maybe definition. therapeutic activism. I know that there is a lot of work going on about Wellbeing Economy Alliance within the TASK network. But I want to invite you to think about active hope, which is a term used by Joanna Mason and Chris Johnston. Because we can fall into the despair and the overwhelm of, and we know now we have a name for eco-anxiety and eco-grief. And that's where I think active hope is particularly important to hold on to. But how do we do it? Active means what actions are we taking? How do we do it? So I came about this imagination idea because somehow we need to imagine new landscapes of mental health and mental health support, and even see ourselves as therapists. And that's why I almost redefine therapy as therapeutic moments. So how do we honor or promote those therapeutic moments that can make a difference? But also it's about acting in the world. It's not about escaping, when we go into nature for our own self-care or recharge. How do we come out of it? So for me, it's about working towards a natural health ecosystem. And again, it might be a dream, but I believe in it. So that we are working more across modalities, we are working across different fields towards the idea of ecological well-being, because it's not just about those that are seeking therapy or they are on a waiting list, but it's about the whole humanity. So my community-based work has been about providing some outdoor family therapy and some group programs for vulnerable adults, and I'll show you some pictures of that. So you can see back in time. So I've run 4 group programs so far. And what I've seen is that I started with the idea of offering maybe some support to some people who were referred by mental health organizations, or some people were new to the area, were joining. So again, for me, it's about not offering a service to any specific group, but a real community group where all ages and different difficulties that they bring are really validated, and people can start connecting with each other. And that has been very much what has happened. That there are some people who have called the group almost my eco family, and they are still connected after 3 years, and they see each other and they go and visit the place that has become meaningful to them. So I had a bit of money to run this project in Whitehawk, which is one of the most deprived areas in Brighton for mental health. I'm part of a local conservation group promoting biodiversity. Did you know that there is a biodiversity duty, by the way? So that everything, local authorities should have that duty at the forefront, and integrate biodiversity in the planning system at all levels, but also trying to influence bigger systems. Again, the context expanding and being part of maybe the Walking Festival was about that. And then I've been running this lovely event, natural festive wreath making, all with natural materials, so that children and family experience the joy of putting it together and taking it home and then doing it the next year. I'm currently running a monthly multicultural ecotherapy walk. And this year I have embarked in this Green Festival on the 18th of May, I had a wonderful team of people, professionals and non-professional, who volunteered alongside me to provide different workshops on the day. So that's the team. We planted a tree, was in the local school. And it wasn't about entertaining the children, but really promoting those activities as a bonding um, activity between children and families, and to experience that, and also to connect to the local green groups that there are, so that people can say start maybe community composting or participate in these conservation groups. And there was a tree, there was the green pledges tree, where everybody was invited to write something about what actions they were gonna take. I'm rushing now, but I'm keen to leave some space. So I would like to leave you with this maybe question: how much wildness can we welcome into our personal and professional lives? And maybe as a guiding question. So I will stop there and maybe take some comments if you want to write anything in the chat, or if you have writing something in the chat that I'm gonna read quickly.
Thank you, Chiara. That was lovely. I can see we've got some things in the chat. Like I can keep my eye on there if you like. So then you can, yeah. And we can also have a hands up as well. So we've got a question there. How do we balance the tension of building much needed homes and keeping the green belts? Any ideas around that? It's a big question, isn't it? So,
I'm not
yeah.
sure I'm the best person to answer. Yeah, it's very complex how to balance needs. Yeah, yeah, and yeah, I don't feel qualified to really give a proper answer to that. Um,
Mm, mm,
Maybe finding ways, forums where they have maybe ways of being able to discuss even these issues tend to become very polarized, aren't they?
mm,
Yeah.
mm. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. It's
Finding ways this, but it really catches the tension. And as you're saying, how do we stay open to each other in those kind of
yeah,
conversations?
yeah. How to stay in conversations. Mm.
Robbie, I can see you've got your Zoom hand up. Let's see if we can open your mic. And
Thanks, John. Thank you so much, Chiara. That was fascinating. There was so much richness there. It was just wonderful. Um, I think a lot of my kind of thoughts and questions were around exactly what Elaine raised. And yeah, I'm very much, I'll put my stake in the ground. I'm very much team build houses. And I wonder, this is I get the feeling a little bit, and it's so interesting what you say. There's almost a kind of a sense of an urban frame of reference in what you talk about, because I grew up in a small town, so I was very lucky. I had lots of different paths, walks, rivers, and I actively moved to the city. So I've definitely got a bias that I live in a city now. I want to stay in the city. There's a lot of challenges that small towns face, as I'm sure you're aware. That I think that a lot of people are leaving. Just so many challenges. There's not that many people there. And I'm in my 20s. I like the hustle and bustle of cities. And I look at something like the Brexit debate, where the biggest divide was urban rural, of rural people feeling left out of the way things are run, of generally being poorer. Not, there's a lot of inner city separation, but generally they're poorer, they feel left out. And I think there's almost a sense of, they've got the nature, they need the housing, the support, the money, the money from the city. That's, look at somewhere like London. There's so much money in London that really needs to be distributed, that I completely understand what you're saying. And I just wonder if there's something, just something there in that nature's really important, but actually we need to build a lot of houses, and we can use some. This is a bit of a hobby horse of mine. We can reuse some buildings, but it's a lot cheaper to build over, frankly, a field, or maybe even something a bit more developed than that, for the sake of the houses. And I just kind of wondered what that feels to you. Almost a sense that for people living in the city, it's quite romantic. Oh, let's go off to the nature for the weekend, and it's it's like a holiday destination, which has got its own kind of power dynamic. And I just wondered,
Yeah.
how that sits with you.
My short answer to that is that nature is even in a plant, you know. We have a plant here, so how to use that, but also how to bring nature into conversations, you know, and ask about those questions, you know, to people about, do you go out in nature, you know, do you look after your well-being? If we believe that we are talking about ecological well-being and that we are part of nature, we need to nurture our well-being through being in nature more. I mean, this is a must question, right? We need to ask that question more and more, but also ask the other questions about the people's relationship with nature, wherever they are, and if they are in an urban environment, you know, they might have memories. I do find a lot of people have memories coming to them, maybe when they are in nature and they are connecting with nature in a meaningful way, because there is some research suggesting that it's not enough maybe to walk through and being, you know, fast into the task of taking the dog walking, you know. So it's about having the time, giving the space to really connect with ourselves through nature and with others through nature. That's
Thank you. If I just come back really quick, that's really interesting. Just for Omar, I think that's very true. I suppose I'm probably an anomaly of, I grew up with nature. I don't really want to, like, you know, it's nice, I get it, but I want city, I want people, I want communities, I want, you know, that's just, but a lot of people don't feel like that, and that's fine. I've got the memories of nature. I don't want that.
That's fine. That's fine. You can look at your pictures from the past. That works too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Robbie. Thank you. Omar, can we come to you next?
Yeah, I just wanted to apologise. I was actually reading about stuff to get ready for me doing my dissertation and actually fell asleep and woke up. Mick gave me a nudge. So I appreciate that, Mick. What I wanted to say is what I heard of your presentation for me was fantastic. And I'll tell you why. Because I only started getting connected to nature about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. And that was to do with the COVID lockdown. I used to go on little walks, and I always was wondering about, when I was on a walk, what is it about nature what lowers my anxiety and stress, and applies that opportunity for me to have more attention because I've got ADHD. So I actually wrote an article about eco walking as an eco psychotherapy intervention, and I've currently just wrote one on eco relaxing. So for me, I started extending the walks in the morning, but it wasn't just the exercise. It was to do with what was around me. And because I was doing audio journaling at the time, so I was expressing my emotions and my thoughts, and I was meeting the same people every day. So it was like a chat just to say, hello, how are you? And there was a different range of people going to, like, Rudyard Lake. I don't know if you can see it at the back. So I was walking to this lake there and back in the morning, what was about a 6 mile walk, and it didn't feel like exercise. What it felt like is a community. It felt like a community of people, and it was a community of different people. And some people had disabilities, some people were elderly people, some people from different cultures, and what I felt is it was a more realistic world than the world I live in now. So I live near a bus station. The only greenery I can see is the hedge outside and the window. So for me, it gave me a new philosophy, it gave me a new purpose between that lockdown, and it actually helped me go back into university and become more connected to people, because I was able to be less hyperactive when the ADHD.
Omar, I'm just thinking about the time. We've
Sorry.
just got a couple of minutes left, but yeah, thank you, Omar.
Yeah, and I'll wrap it up anyway. Yeah, so it was able to help me a lot, but I only really discovered the idea about 4 or 5 years ago, how helpful it can be for people. So that's what I wanted to say. I loved what you said. I would advocate it all day long.
I would love to read your paper, yeah, because I have a lot of requests actually from neurodiverse people, and that nature, what can do for them.
Sure, not a problem.
Oh, for all of us.
Thank you, Omar. Thank you. Jade, I can see you've got your hand up. We don't see you yet, Jade. Is it possible to pop your camera on, and then we can hopefully hear from you as well? Or maybe let's see if we can open your microphone and Jade, we should be able to hear you. Oh, and we can see you now. Great. Hi, Jade.
my camera's not great, so I tend to keep it off. But if you can see me, it just will freeze like that all the time.
No problem. Yeah.
I enjoyed the presentation, and I think it. One thing that's going on in my community at the moment is the council is making us pay for parking everywhere. So now the parks and nature is no longer free to access unless you can walk yourself there, basically. So my kind of thought is around, I know we're in this kind of group for social justice. When do we start acting beyond the therapy room, beyond the ripple effect? Because I know it's outraged me that I've now got to pay for parkings. I've been there since I was a child, and this is where I take my child. And it used to be that for people that were struggling, the park and nature was free, and now it's not. So at what point, I think I'm a little bit more of a doer. Maybe there's a little activist in me that just wants to start protesting and really allow our voices to be heard on how just important this is, and start speaking to the people that have the control.
I agree with you, Jay. Is a matter of access, and you know, what about if you go every day? Why should you pay for the parking? And that has happened, yeah, in Brighton too. And it becomes then a way of excluding other people who cannot afford to pay the parking. And yeah, in general, and I would say each one of you will have maybe a way to being an activist, and hopefully I've shared my way of being an activist, maybe a bit more quietly than any maybe other people who feel that they have to change things more directly and challenge, yeah, the status quo in these different ways.
Yeah, I guess that's my kind of question, and the way that I want to move is to be, I'm not a quiet person in general, if I'm perfectly honest. So yeah, I want to make huge waves, I think.
Yeah, and go for it. You know, my invitation is, if you feel that this is your way of being an activist and changing things and making, a lot of people will benefit from it, you know, and we all different people, so we will do different things. If you feel the call to do that, please, we are behind you.
Thank you, Jade. Thank you so much for that. I'm just noticing the time. We've come to the end of our hour, and I want to say thank you so much, Chiara, for coming along and bringing your presentation. Your book is a wonderful resource to colleagues too, and I guess you might share your website in the chat as well, so people could make contact as well, which would be wonderful. Yeah.
I can say also, I do run some online groups for professionals who are interested in maybe taking therapy outdoors, or some also supervision groups if you're already working in nature. Okay, but thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to connect and to share my work. And yeah, hopefully we'll have other opportunities to come together and link up and maybe join actions.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you. I know some colleagues were kind of asking about training and supervision in the chat. So
go
yeah,
to the
wonderful.
website and just get in touch. I'll be delighted to connect with you all.
Thank you, Chiara. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming along tonight and offering us a seminar. Thank you.
Bye-bye for now.